Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. I'm going to go ahead and put it said right off the top. If you're new to my Bible study, if you're new to my Genesis breakdown, if you're new to any of this, you want to start at the top. Things are not what you might be expecting, and I would hate for you to get your feelings hurt. We're going to dive into Genesis 31 and pick that back up, but before that, we're going to recap real quick that the genetic manipulation of the flocks of Laban is going on. Jacob is increasing his flocks, and according to him in Genesis 30, it is through somewhat what could be perceived as trickery by placing the branches in the trough. We're not going to rehash that argument that was in yesterday's argument. And today we're going to be looking at it because this is a whole different account of how that happened. This is a different accounting for that situation than the one that we just got in 30. And so we're going to read this as separate because Genesis is an amalgamation of stories. And these little pieces of stories that seem disjointed and seem out of place can sometimes be a whole different story that might be the truth. It might not. I don't know which one of these is the truth, right? But they're not the same story. So this is Genesis 31. Jacob flees from Laban. Now Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, has taken away all that belonged to our father and built all of his wealth at our father's expense. So we're seeing jealousy here, right? This is envy. This is covetousness. And Jacob saw from the countenance of Laban that his attitude towards him had changed. Now we're going to do this real quick because I like word studies, and the word countenance later has a very significant meaning. This says faces. Let's look in the Hebrew real quick. From the countenance, from this word here, which is 6640 or 6440, and that is the surface upon the face, on the surface, in the open, the presence of the Lord, his countenance fell. Yeah, see, in Genesis 4, when the countenance had fallen, that's referring to the divine aura that surrounds us. I have videos on that. It's in the Infinite Integration playlist. And you really do have a magnetic aura that holds you. Like, this is what it's talking about. It is visible if you train yourself to see it. I'm not all that great at it yet, but I can discern sometimes in the right mind frame what they're talking about here. And it is what is depicted as the halo, right? It is a light body, white combining of all the magnetics that hold you together. It is the divine will holding you in place. And so that's what, when they're talking about the countenance, and he says, I can tell from the countenance of Laban that his attitude towards him has changed, is implying something that not everybody is clued into. And that is what I just said. That implies a different knowledge than we have been given thus far in this book. That's why another proof of amalgamation. This is another instance of this is not explained. The countenance is literally a magnetic force. And so he can detect that. He can see the auras of that. We know later, we'll see later, that Moses has that ability too. We'll see later that Jesus, when he says that he felt the power go away from him when the beggar touched his robe, like, that's what happened. It was the magnetics, the divine aura. And so, yeah, the countenance here is important because he is detecting that your aura betrays your intentions, your health, and your well-being in a general sense. So he is detecting magnetic fluctuations in this man. We do that all the time. I have that in my playlist, how the interaction of the different magnetic points in your body give you different intuitions, right? So when you have a gut feeling, that is the interaction of your gut or your sacral chakra. That's going to set somebody off. With your heart, or with your solar plexus, with your sacral or your heart. And That feeling lets you know whether to proceed or not. That's God talking to you through the divine aura in your chakras, leading you in which direction you should go. And all of that combines into this should be white aura that is normally a little bit off color because something is misaligned. And it is visible if you're trained for it. So he's seeing contentment go away and resentment take the place because the aura is shifting colors just ever so subtly. That happens. Now, I'm not an expert in it. There are people who read them much better than I do, but they are real. I can attest anecdotally to that. All right, so he saw from the countenance of Laban that his attitude towards him had changed. And then the Lord said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you." So God's telling him, you're seeing this, run. In this whole other chapter, God really didn't talk a whole lot to him, right? Here, God's giving him some instruction. And God's saying, take all that you have and run. I absolutely believe that God speaks to people. He speaks through your magnetics. He can speak audibly to you. One second, let me let my dog. Go ahead. He can speak audibly to you. He can make you, not make you, he can let you know what you should be doing. Let me make sure that's not, okay, we're good. And through dreams, through waking visions, all of these things are real. All of these things I have had. And I can't tell you with absolute certainty and 100% provable fact, yes, this is real. But I can tell you with absolute certainty, anecdotally, yes, this is real. I have had the experience. Whether you believe that or not, I don't care. Whether you call me a heretic or not, I don't care. Because I have had the experience, I have no choice but to say and do the things that I do. When I'm doing this, I don't have animosity, right? This is correction, right? So he's telling him to leave. That can absolutely happen, but the way that this next part breaks out makes it seem a little bit shady. So Jacob sent word and called Rachel and Leah to the fields where his flocks were, and he told them, "I can see from your father's countenance that his attitude towards me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all of my strength, and although he has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times, God has not allowed him to harm me." What happened to that part of the history? Why is that not part of the story except as a passing mention, as justification because God just told me to leave? I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying, why not put it in there before? If you're giving the history and you want the justification, why is that not in there? Oh, he cheated me and changed my wages. God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckle will be your wages, and then the whole flock bore speckled offspring. And if he said the streaked will be your wages, then the whole flock bore streaked offspring. And thus God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. And when the flocks were breeding, I saw in a dream that the streaked, speckled, and spotted and speckled males were mating with the females. In that dream, the angel of God said to me, "Jacob." And I replied, "Here I am. Look up and see that all the males of the mate that are mating with the flock are streaked, spotted, or speckled. For I have seen all that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and made a solemn vow to me. Now get up and leave this land at once and return to your native land." Okay, unpacking time. In the previous chapter, he told us that they mated the way they did because of the branches that he stripped and put into the trough, and they bred in front of the trough, right? Well, now he's saying that he had a vision from God on how to manipulate genetics. That's what this is. He's telling him this when the flocks were breeding, I saw in a dream. Look up right here. This look up. If you go here, the word is right here. Nasa. This is what the root of the word comes from. This is how we do word studies, right? And so it means to lift, carry, or take. It means to grab the burden and do it in the context in which it is spoken. It says, look up. It's not saying look up. What it's saying is take up. It's saying bear the burden. It's saying carry this. It is saying this is your job and your responsibility. See to it that all the males are mating with the flock, are streak, spotted, or speckled. That is how you manipulate the genes, right? This is a different story than the previous one. And so, if this is the version, then I could see this as the blessing of God, right? Because he was faithful in his offering. But what is I am the God of Bethel is very interesting phraseology. Inside of this religion, generally speaking, it is I'm the God of your fathers. I am the God I am. I am the God, like, it's not I am the God of Bethel. I'm the God of Bethel is implying a much smaller God than the God that should be here, right? Than the God who is, than the God I am. That is much smaller than that. He isn't worshiping Yahweh. He is not worshiping the God of all things, the creator of heavens and earth. This is the God of Bethel, the place where he was when he wrestled in his dream. Now, this is consistent, the last chapter wasn't, with that part of the story. The wrestling part of the story. And so he had wrestled with the angel, or Elohim, or God, however you want to look at it, on the way in. Or he was talked to on the way in. And he wrestles on the way out. Where you anointed the pillar and made a solemn vow to me. Now, the me of the God of Bethel is... That's problematic for me. But I've already explained their reasoning. I'm not going to continue to expound upon it. And Rachel and Leah replied, and this is again interesting. Do we have any portion or inheritance left in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as outsiders? Not only has he sold us, but he has certainly squandered what was paid for us. Surely, all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children, so do what God has told you. As someone who comes from a life of crime, this reads to me like, hey, let's take his stuff. I think we're entitled to it, and let's go ahead and do it. That's how it reads to me. I could be wrong. I always hold out the possibility that I am wrong. If I am told that I am not wrong, then I will tell you that I was told that. I was not told that here. And so I could be wrong, but this reads to me like, yeah, let's go ahead and just take his stuff. I think we're entitled to it. She thinks we're entitled to it. You think we're entitled to it. Let's just take it. Well, that's not how anything works. If this was honest wages gained honestly, then there should be no problem with leaving. You shouldn't have to steal anything. You shouldn't have to be surreptitious about anything. You should not have to have any subterfuge whatsoever in your life. And so, then Jacob got up and put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all of his livestock before him, along with all of the possessions he had acquired in Paddan Aram, and to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now, while Laban was out shearing the sheep, which is when they're leaving, while Laban is away shearing his sheep in a different place from where they are, Rachel stole her father's household idols. So Laban, his mother's cousin, or his mother's brother, right? This is Jacob's mother's brother, and Rachel and Leah are his cousins. Abram was directed to, right? How? Okay. How is it that they're worshiping idols if the people he fled to are the people's, well, maybe I'm remembering wrong, and the mother was also a pagan, but that doesn't really track with the chosen people either, because they were told to go choose specific bloodlines, and going back to your cousin was supposed to be because that they were pure in their bloodlines too, and that they were worshiping the correct God. So how did they have idols? How does that fit? Because the nature of man is idol worshiping, which we get into in Exodus. Okay, you can definitely make that argument, but does it have to be that? Like, it seems like maybe this is another one of those amalgamation stories, but this is just a slip up, right? This is a everybody knows the story about the stealing of the idols, but nobody's going to really notice that the God Laban shouldn't have been worshiping the idols. He should have been worshiping the other. So this part comes into play in Exodus again in a different manner, right? The cup that's hidden instead of stolen, and it's said that it's stolen, and that all of that comes into play again. And so this is part of that amalgamating and making it, oh yeah, I remember that story. And then you just incorporate it. And so he fled with all of his possessions. That implies that he is leaving not exactly under the best of terms, right? Maybe he has reason to flee under not the best of terms because we have a track record of that. We've already seen him flee his brother because he stole his birthright by demanding that his brother came to him starving, and he said, yeah, I'll feed you if you give me everything you have, everything that you were entitled to. Yeah, then I'll feed you. Right? We've already talked about how that happened. Well, now he's fleeing. While the man that he is serving, and he has sworn service to, now his service may have been completed, I don't know. They don't really get into the specifics of that. They tell you how long he has served, but they don't tell you what the terms, like if he completed his full terms of service under the contract, right? Now, he says that he changed the terms of the contract a lot of times, and we can even go ahead and take him at his word. And if that was me, and you kept changing the terms of service on me, and things had actually happened the way that it's described in the absolutely, I'm going to flee. Me and my people, we're going to try and bounce on out. I don't know about taking all the flocks. That might seem a little hard to run away. But me and my family, for sure, would be long gone before you could come back. So that part seems a little suspect to me, too. And then we get into Laban pursuit, right? And so this is the pursuit of Jacob. And on the third day, Laban was informed that Jacob had fled. So he took his relatives with him, pursued Jacob for 7 days, and overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. But that night, God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream and warned him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. That's interesting. He has chased him for 7 days, right? 3 days after he leaves, he finally gets word that this guy who showed up, said he was family, married 2 of your daughters, had children with the daughters and with the maidservants, watched over your flock for 20 years and saw that you prospered, and then made a deal to prosper himself, whether or not those terms were whatever. The deal was made. We don't know if the contract was ever fully fulfilled. And so he's running away. And in Laban's eyes, he is stealing. We have a track record of theft, and he is stealing. And so he pursues him vigorously because he has to make up 3 days and the 3 days that he's traveled, right? So that's 6 days right there of just makeup time to finally catch up to him. That is a hard pursuit. Now, he's traveling slower because he's got these massive flocks with him that he's entitled to. And so Jacob pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there as well. And then Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You have deceived me and carried off my daughters like captives of war. We're going to unpack. Why did you run away secretly and deceive me without even telling me? I would have sent you away with joy and singing, with tambourines and harps. But you did not even let me kiss my grandchildren and tell my daughters goodbye. Now you have done a foolish thing. I have power to do to you great harm. But last night the God of your father said to me, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long for your father's house. Why have you stolen my gods? Okay, let's unpack from here back. So what we are getting from this story that is not directly stated is that the reason he is given for him leaving is not that you non-consensually bound me into a marriage, denied my wages, changed my wages, forced me into a servitude that I didn't really agree to. It's not any of that. The reason you gave was that you were longing for your father's home. And while that is absolutely understandable, that is not what you just told your wives in this infallible book. And so we have a contradiction here that cannot be overcome unless you're just making excuses. Well, later on it's justified because of this prophecy that I see as being this way. Let me on my door. Okay, so back to where we was. I normally don't do jump cuts, but that's definitely going to have to be one. It took me a minute to get him in. And so what we have here is that he's fleeing. And he's given a justification that is not the one that he has just given to his wife. That is an insurmountable contradiction, right? You cannot justify that outside of, I want it to be this way. And so we again have a consistency problem within the infallible book. That's a problem. All right. Now, deceived me and carried off my daughters like captives of war. That again is another interesting turn of phrase here because, well, didn't he just serve 20 years for the daughters? Didn't he have wages coming to him for service after that? Like, he served 14 years for the daughters and then 6 more years, right? So we had 20 years of service, is what they claimed. And so, well, how is that theft? Why would you even mention that it's theft? It's because it probably was. We have a history of that. And so that's a problem. I think that the God of your father thing might have even happened, and God said, don't kill him, right? I don't know. God doesn't like people to kill people. He has told us not to shed blood of man, right? So, especially in anger. If you're defending yourself, you can. It's not a good thing. You should not be happy in it. You should not ever revel in the taking of a human life. But the only time it is justified is if you're in defense of yourself or others, or the freedom thereof. And so, I can see God popping into me like, hey, bro, I know you're mad, but don't kill him, right? See what he's got to say first. He's got your daughters. He's got your grandkids. I can see God saying that. And Jacob answered, I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. Why? If you finished your service, then why is that a concern? If you find your gods with anyone here, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself. If anything is yours, and take it back. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the idols. Again, this is entirely plausible, possible, and even probable. But it is also possible that he was fully aware when he fled with what should have been his righteous property, what his wife took from her father's house. It is entirely possible that happened. I can't say that it did, but it is entirely possible. And to say that it's not is just to deny reality. Now, I can't say that, yes, that is what happened, but what's coming next makes it seem that way, right? This seems like a plot. So Laban, In the presence of a relative, Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the idols. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, then Leah's tent, and then the tents of the two maidservants, but he found nothing. And then he left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken Laban's household idols and put them in the saddlebag of her camel and was sitting on them. And Laban searched everything in the tent but found nothing. And Rachel said to her father, Sir, do not be angry that I cannot stand up before you, for I am having my period. So Laban searched but could not find the household idols. Then Jacob became incensed and challenged Laban. What is my crime? He said. For what sin of mine have you so hotly pursued me? You searched all my goods. Have you found anything that belongs to you? Put it here before my brothers and yours, that they may judge between the two of us. What brothers? Like your brother-in-laws? Okay, well, we can go with that, but that's not the phrasing here. Okay, but before my brothers and yours, are your brothers? Like, so Laban brought his whole family to pursue you? Why? Because you took the household idols. But you were fearful that he was going to be mad you took his daughters, that you righteously served for. It doesn't add up. Like, it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, right? It would not. If this was a court case, it would not pass. So Rachel lies to her father about stealing the idols and keeps them. And God's chosen's okay with stealing the idols when he finds out about it later, but he didn't know anything about it now. You know what I mean? And so then he becomes incensed when after he finds out that he doesn't get caught, then he gets mad, right? He was fearful before, but now he's mad. That's some projection and some turning things around going on there. You searched all my goods. Have you found anything that belongs to you? I've been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten of the rams of your flock. I do not bring to you anything torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for what was stolen, day or night. As it was, the heat consumed me by day, and frost by night, and sleep fled from my eyes. Remember when I was talking about the job of the shepherd? That's what this is. And sleep fled from my eyes. Thus, for 20 years I have served in your household, 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock. And you have changed my wages 10 times. Again, this chapter is when he talks about that for the first time. It was not in the previous chapter where he was actually working for Laban. It's in the one where he's leaving. If the God of my father, the God of Abram, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, surely by now you would have sent me away empty-handed. Let's look that up real quick because I did not prior to this. I want to see what the fear of Isaac means. And the dread, the alarm of Isaac. Interesting. So that would be the warning to flee in the night, right? The fear, the warning of Isaac, the dread. Let's pop it open. Let's look at it again. Let's look at it a little bit deeper because that's what we do. The fear of his Isaac, the fear of his father, and the dread. That's from Genesis 31:32. So that's just 31:42. That's where we're at. 31:53, that's later. Exodus is later. There is no prior reference to this. So this is, all right, so dread, before, often, terrifying, unfitting for action. So this is not even, this is like a precognition physically. This is the feeling of the aura change. That's what this is. Very interesting. We'll have to see how this plays out in the rest of the book because we got it in Deuteronomy and in Chronicles, and the dread of God, the fear of the Lord, the dread of the Lord. That seems to be maybe, you know how the presence of the Lord makes you tremble and weak, right? Maybe that is what is being referenced here. We'll have to look at it further. I'm not going to be definitive on that, but that does seem to be in line. Very interesting. Okay, so And the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac. It's the God of my father, the God of Abraham. See, that's what I was talking about before with the God of Bethel. Like, why would he refer to himself as the God of Bethel? That's not his name. That's not how he tells you to refer to him at all. And so this is as close as it ever gets to how the God references himself, and other than just as the unpronounceable name. So yeah, that's interesting. Had not been with me, surely by now you would have sent me away empty-handed. Why would you think so poorly of your father-in-law? Or were you fearing the consequences of your own actions? God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, and last night he rendered judgment. Okay, that's interesting too. He rendered judgment by saying, don't say anything. But Jacob's covenant with Laban, and this is where it gets interesting again. Laban answered Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these sons are my sons. These flocks are my flocks. Everything you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or the children they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between you and me. So this is between the two men. So Jacob picked out a stone and set it up as a pillar, and said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took the stones and made a mound, and there by the mound they ate. And Laban called it Jagar Shahadutha, and Jacob called it Galeed. And then Laban declared, this mound is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore this place was called Galeed. It was also called Mitzpah, because Laban said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are absent from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or take other wives, although no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Laban also said to Jacob, here is the mound, and here is the pillar I have set up, between you and me. This mound is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this mound to harm you, and you will not go past this mound and pillar to harm me. And may the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. And so Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. And Jacob offered the sacrifice on the mountain and invited his relatives to eat a meal. And after they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. And early the next morning Laban got up and kissed his grandchildren and daughters and blessed them, and then left to return home. Okay, so there is a lot to unpack here. The obvious response to whatever Jacob had done is violence. The fact that the Lord appeared to him, whether or not that's true, and I do not discount that it is possible, to not harm him, shows that there was obviously some violence intended. His own actions and words tells him, I intended you violence. And then this mound is saying, if you bring your scrawny butt back across this sand, I'm going to kill you. And if I hear that you're mistreating my daughters, I'm going to kill you. And if I hear that you're running around on my daughters, I'm going to kill you. That's what he's saying right here. That is what this covenant is. Laban is saying that obviously the part that has been left out of this is that there has been some type of mistreatment of the daughters, or he would not be concerned. We have seen evidence of taking other wives. He has 4 baby mamas. And although no one is with us, remember that me and God is watching for you for me, right? So there is a history here that we are not clued into of some type of domestic issue. I can't say whether he puts his hands on them, or if it's just sleeping around, or if he's verbally abusive, or whatever the case may be. It is a common occurrence. Men, especially way back then, are not nice people. Like even now, most men are barely more than savages, including myself, by the way. And so I don't have a problem seeing that maybe this father was upset that these daughters and grandchildren might be abused. Right? He says it plain out. But Jacob picks up a stone that sets it up as a pillar, and then it says Laban sets, here's the pillar I have set up. So who set up the pillar? Again, we have a contradiction. I'm inclined to believe it was Laban because of what he says here. He says, you see this rock? Don't come past this rock. If your foot sets across this rock, I'm going to kill you. Right? So people going to die. And so what he's telling him is, fine. If my daughters are willing to go with you, take them and my grandchildren and these flocks that you have contrived to take from me and ran away from while I was 3 days away and gave me a false excuse for, fine. Take them. Go in peace, but don't come back. And again, we're brought into the difficulty that if this is the chosen people, if this is the tribe of God, is this the behavior that should be represented by the chosen people, by the tribes of God, by the ones responsible for the redemption of all mankind? Is this really the behavior that God is going to bless in the way that it is blessed? I have a differing opinion from that. I believe that things are different than that. And hopefully I am showing you in the own words. I am insisting upon a literal translation of the Bible. That is what I'm doing. I am reading it word for word. If there is a problem that a word might be mistranslated, I'll look it up. I don't have a problem. I will go back to the Hebrew, find out what the original was. I will go back to the Aramaic. I will go back wherever it needs to go. I will look at whatever evidence is presented for whatever argument is presented. But if I get to the conclusion at the end of it that what is being presented is not what is being represented of that presentation, right? This is not, these things that I'm bringing up are blatantly obvious from reading the text. I'm not extrapolating wildly in most cases. I do occasionally, I'm not going to lie. But I don't extrapolate wildly. I'm just reading what the book says, a literal interpretation of the word. And it's telling me that maybe the story that we have been sold is a deception. That maybe the grand deception that is referenced later is the fact that everything past Noah happened in the way that it has been represented to us. That any of it was necessary in the way that it has been represented to us. I'm here to tell you that what God says throughout this book, this is not the first time I'll say it, and this won't be the last time I'll say it, but what he tells us throughout this book is that all you need is him, and all he wants is you. He doesn't want you to sacrifice something else he created. It is his. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Render unto God the things that are God. Right? And God owns everything. He is me, he is you, he is the space between me and you, and he is the space between the space between me and you. He is every single thing in existence. Everything and all of the nothing is God. There is nothing that is separate from him. He does not require your sacrifice. He requires your willingness. He wants your heart. And not on a platter, but given to him in service. That is what you are called to do. That is what you are called for. That's why you are created. To help people to find him in a positive manner without beating him over the head with a book that has been wrong. That's never, ever to take away from the ultimate message of this book, because the book is an instruction manual. It really is. I'm not getting into the psychological parts of these amalgamations. Jordan Peterson does that better than I do. But there are psychological implications to these stories. I'm not getting into the galactic implications of these stories and the actual creation stories that are contained and mythified inside of these stories, because the Thunderbolts Project does a better job of that. And Ben Davidson does a better job of that. And Randall Carlson does a better job of telling you what these other things mean, right? We will get into, when we get into the Revelation again, and when we get into Daniel, and when we get into Isaiah, and we start talking about prophecies, the actual things that they are describing and talking about, the wheels within wheels, and the signs in the sky, and the things that they actually are, because that is the area that I have spent an extensive amount of time looking at. I don't remember scientific stats and data because I don't need them. I deal on the faith level. I deal in this book. I deal in the metaphysical. I can see and do and manipulate forces that God has given for us to use for His glory and benefit. And so that's where I spend my time and effort, is in His kingdom, following His commands, trying and failing to live by His word, right? Everybody fails. It's the repentance. It's the intention. If you say that you repent and then you turn around and do the same thing intentionally, you did not repent. And saying you repent did not change anything. You're not, like, you can walk up the aisle in any church in this country, in this planet, and say the sinner's prayer and not mean it, and it does nothing for you. You're not saved, sealed, and delivered. But you can fall to your knees in your own home and say, God, I am sorry, and it is done. And that is the God's honest truth. He tells you that. The only thing ever required from Him is you. And He wants that. He loves you. He created you. You are here for a purpose. You are meant to be here. You are meant to be here. God loves you. I love you. Love yourself enough to understand that. At least enough to understand that. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a very complicated topic. And hopefully, if you have questions, you will leave them down below, because I do like the interaction. Stay respectful, please, because I like to be respectful. I like people to be respectful, and we can have a respectful dialogue. I don't have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with me. But we don't have to get bitter. We don't have to call names. And we don't have to be mean. So keep it respectful. Leave me all the comments you want. You can like or dislike or sub or not sub. I don't care. Like, I'm here to put the information out that I'm told to put out. I do reactions so that we can talk about them. I get a bigger audience to do what I'm called to do. Between this and the MBTI, this is what I'm here for. All right. Everything else is to serve that in the service of Him. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.